welcome to the Rabyd Nation. We are live. And welcome to the Rabyd Atheist live stream on Saturday, where I spend a lot of time reviewing various things and doing various things. I normally review pastors, but seeing Paul was kind enough to put me in his latest Paulogia video, I'm kind of going through Habermass. I like taking on Habermass anyway, so that's what we're going to be doing tonight. But we have a lot of other things to take care of ahead of time. So welcome to me. I'm your host, Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to all of you who are citizens and non-citizens alike to the Rabyd Nation. Welcome. And hail to our Lord Fangs. The only official religion of the Rabyd Nation is Fangsology, as dictated by the Church of Fangs, with me as its, of course, holy head. So there you go. There we are. A couple of things. Just a reminder, we do have a goal in chat that just helps me pay for the stream and pay for my time a little bit. Appreciate it. So there's that aspect of it. You know, I just saw this and on the bottom of the chat, and I now have an official name for those of you who are subscribed perhaps and not members. We're just going to call you tourists. and those of you that are not subscribed and just watching, I'm not sure what name I have for you, but you should subscribe. But so thanks everybody. But yes, yeah, if you're a tourist or a citizen, there you go. So yes, tonight we will be taking on Habermas a little bit more. I'm reviewing Paul's video on Habermas because Habermas did not like Paul's fact checking. And so I'm not just doing it for that reason, because what Paul puts in this video at the end is kind of new stuff, new material, things that are more current to the debate. And I want to go through that stuff at some point as well. So there's that aspect of it. So, but yes, there is a goal in chat. You know, if you reach that goal, I will wear whatever hat is chosen by the poll. The problem, of course, is the Holy Bunny hat is only available on Saturday streams. So that usually is what wins, but we'll see if somebody else the votes can hit a little bit higher level on the rest of it. So there's that. I also can announce that we also have a bunch of I Killed Earl. Earl has done a bunch of artwork over the last couple of days, to the point where I've had to literally tell her to get up, move around, wiggle, do what she needs to do to not be not be stiff and all that stuff. And so, but we have a lot of shall we say Star Wars style related art from Earl tonight. And so that's all I'm going to say. And I think I'm going to do this stream. I'll do like an hour and a half of reviewing Paul's video, and then we're going to spend the last half hour or so having some fun and looking at Earl's art and stuff like that. So either way, we'll do that. But let's get a quick roll call, see who is here. Fred, of course, is always here early. Triple E is here. Let's see, Earl is here, and yes, she may have gotten to her Magnum Opus on this one, so we'll do that. Blossom has a great prayer. I can do some things through Fangs, who doesn't strengthen me, but I mean, he tries. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Blossom, that's all you're going to get out of Fangs. I'm sorry. Fangs as a deity, he's kind of crap. Like he's busy with his own shit, and he just doesn't really help you out that much. So there's that. And then there's Michael, who just gave me the tourist compliment. Habermas definitely qualifies as a preacher, yes. He definitely helps them out. Mighty Philbert and Asho are here. All right. I'm going to pick up the video where I left off. According to my notes, it was at 21 minutes and 30 seconds into the video. And I'm going to
about academic rigor.
Okay, I'm going to turn that off. Okay. Up to this point, me and Paul have kind of bashed on Habermas for his very poor count of quote unquote non-Christian scholars. And then Habermas has kind of doubled down on that, and he's trying to split hairs. It got funny because he wants to say, well, most of them aren't evangelical Christians. Okay. And it's like, where did the word evangelical even come from my perspective? Like, I haven't heard this term before in relationship to this. And aren't the other Christians still, like, all Christianity has to kind of sort of believe in the resurrection? Like, if you don't have a resurrection, you know, you don't have a Christianity. And so he, on the one hand, he's like, oh, I'm not counting non-evangelical Christians. They're all considered non-Christian. And the whole thing was about non-Christian versus Christian. And now it's suddenly become about evangelical Christians versus everybody else. And so that was an interesting take. And it's funny because he wants everybody to buy his book. So he's not trying to insult certain Christians that might not be evangelical, but at the same time, he's trying to save face with the fact that he screwed up with his count and his book 3 about the scholars that support his position. So yes, there's that. Yes. Yeah, I've hoppings, maybe. Yeah, me and Earl kind of fanboy about Paul. Paul's one of my favorite YouTubers. So not just atheist, but he's one of my favorite YouTubers. I love watching his stuff. But so we're kind of at this point in the video, as I recall, we might still be involved in this discussion about whether or not who's a Christian and who's a not. But I stopped at that point because I'd been, okay, I'll check my, oh yeah. Okay, Earl, I'm going to save that for later. But yes, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. Outstanding. But yes. So let's pick up where we left off. This is part 2 of me reviewing Paul's video dealing with Habermas not liking his fact checking. So fact checking seems to be a problem with a lot of apologists. So there's Ron is here, Ann is here, Elizabeth is here. Outstanding. Yes. I don't care either. You being Fang Shu. Yes. I actually, funny story, Ron, in our book, The Misadventures of Fang, I'm working on chapter 3, and I've introduced the concept of bunny foo. So we'll see how that works in the book when it comes out. So there's that. Oh, so here we go.
Stop advertising your book as if it's something that it is not. Somewhere between 79 and 92% of the authors you cite affirm death, deity, and resurrection.
But here's all you need. In order for Christianity to be true, 3 major facts. When you look at all the definitions in the New Testament, mostly in Paul's works and in the book of Acts, here's the 3 teachings: the deity, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And I'll get it down to this level, Frank. If someone said to me, basically all I think that's true in the New Testament can be summarized as evidence for the deity, death, resurrection, and a few other things. Is that good enough for you? Well, I'll tell you what. For me, it's good enough to get you into the kingdom, and you can find out what the answer to those things are. But if the deity, death, resurrection of Jesus are true, Christianity follows. I start my lecture.
Okay, so this is kind of a little bit of a review. I think I went over this part again, but what Habermas just did there is he made his distinction between evangelical Christians and non-Christians pretty much nonsensical. I don't think he realizes that's what he did, but he absolutely made the distinction nonsensical, because nearly all non-evangelical Christians also believe in the deity, death, and resurrection of Jesus. So it's like, it's not a question. And if that's the case, then 80% of the scholars you cite in book 3 are Christians. And so your claim that there were more non-Christians than Christians is still false. Okay. And you just falsified it yourself. Okay. Like it's your thing. So it's like, I don't understand why this is so hard. I know the problem is Paul kind of fact checked you, and you don't like that he fact checked you. This is what this whole video is about, because how dare somebody who doesn't have a degree in a related field fact check you on something as simple as what the religion of these scholars is, what the stated religion is. And the stated religion puts 79% of them in the Christian camp, and they believe in the deity, death, and resurrection in some way, shape, or form. Okay. And that's what they're counting on. And so here we are. This is where we're at. And so let's pick up the video right there.
Now, and that's how I start.
If affirming death, deity, resurrection is all that it takes for Christianity to be true, then that's also the only distinction that matters if you're going to pretend you have heterogeneous representation. Sadly, when Gary goes on to book promotion tour, the various podcasts are rather unoriginal and wanting to cover basics like why is the resurrection important, what are the minimal facts, and why is swoon theory silly. We've covered those things at length. But if you want to join me in the resurrection weeds, there were a few nuggets of novelty. This viewer question relates to the Jerusalem meetup that is one of the 12 events I reflect upon as part of my minimal witnesses hypothesis. Gary.
Okay, I want to stop right there. Kind of a shifting of gears. Okay, so like when Gary goes on to these podcasts, I will agree with Paul. They are setting up softball questions for him. Like a lot of these podcasts are, shall we say, very friendly to the resurrection. They're very friendly because they're Christian podcasts. And of course, it's like they're giving him the questions he wants to answer, that he has prepared answers for. I'm fairly certain that if me or Paul or somebody else like us interviewed Habermas, we would not softball him like that. Like I would take on his minimal facts theory directly as to whether or not any of those facts actually prove the resurrection at all. Like I've looked at them, and even if they are facts, I'm not really sure how they relate to the resurrection half the time. Like there's a lot of things that you could do with them. And so, yes, the Jerusalem meetup is what Paul's about to talk about. It's also one of the key things for me is because apologists like to use this. Oh, well, Paul must have talked to Peter about the resurrection and all this other stuff. But that's not what the contention was at the Jerusalem meetup based on the Bible itself. Okay, based on the Bible itself and Paul's own words, it was all about whether we should allow Gentiles into the faith without circumcising them. That was the whole issue. And they may have talked about other things, but it's not recorded what they talked about. So that's pure hearsay. Okay. So when other people talk about this stuff, it's like, you don't have that as a fact. Oh, they must have. They were all Christians and all that stuff. So this, yeah, you will. It's one of those things, it's one of those things where both apologists and those of us that are counter apologetics, we sit here and we talk about the Jerusalem meetup. And I'm like, well, yeah, it might have happened, but we only know one subject for sure that was talked about. The rest of it is all conjecture. So there's that. Yeah. I mean, Elizabeth, you and I both, everybody, like, yeah, it's intellectual honesty at stake. People ask me why I'm doing this, and it's like, I find apologists to be intellectually dishonest. Like they accept things as evidence that if they were talking about another religion or something, they wouldn't. Okay, they accept the same categories of evidence other people. So is there. So yes, Earl's advertising her artwork. Yes, stay to the end. I'm going to knock off Paul at about an hour and a half into the stream, and then we'll spend a half hour and do what we do, which is hang out and giggle and laugh, and we'll have some artwork to share too. So we'll do that. But yes, this is the Jerusalem meetup, and Paul's going to talk about it, and I'm going to kind of echo some of his sentiments.
He leans heavily on these passages to insist that Peter's resurrection experience and Paul's resurrection experience must have been the same kind of physical body interaction.
Then we got another question here from Jay. Is it required that we see Paul seeking information from the other apostles in Galatians? Galatians 2, I guess, when he goes out and talks to Peter, James, and John.
1 and 2.
My understanding is that, that's true, yeah. My understanding is that Paul had the more mature gospel message, emphasizes that he was not influenced by the 12.
He doesn't say that he wasn't. Okay, let me ask you a question. If Paul was not influenced by the 12, why did he go to Jerusalem just 3 years after his conversion and ask Peter and James, the brother of Jesus, to tell him the story of what they saw with the resurrected Jesus? Galatians 2:2. Why did?
Okay.
If he wasn't listening to him, why did he go there? It's a long trip in those days. You didn't get on a plane and zip there. So why did he go listen to him?
Resurrection apologists in particular always present Galatians 1-2 as if it's their friend. When they read it, they see Paul making a pilgrimage to learn all about Jesus from the eyewitnesses.
Okay, this is absolutely true. Apologists love Galatians 1 and 2 because they do think it's their friend. I read Galatians 1 and 2 now, and it's been a while, but I remember reading it after becoming an atheist and a skeptic and suddenly realizing that that's not necessarily your friend. Apologists like to, they like to put this in the most positive vein for themselves, that Paul was going down there to sit at the feet of Peter and listen to him, tell them all about the gospel and all this other stuff. I don't know that Galatians 1 and 2, if you read it as a skeptic, is all that friendly to this idea that Paul was just going down to listen to Peter. I mean, Paul literally says that he opposed Peter in Galatians 1 and 2. Like there was an argument. There was something that came up that they had a major disagreement about. And apologists like to gloss over that. They really do like to gloss over it. And the fact is, Paul may, after 3 years, may not have he may have come up with his own doctrines of Christianity, and he was defending them. So, yeah, the guy that predicted that we're all still here. Christians are still here. That's the bigger bummer sometimes, some of them. Most Christians are pretty decent folks, but there's some Christians I wish would get raptured. They don't make the world a better place, so... Christianity, the Paul wanted to attract Gentiles by getting rid of the requirement. Yes, and that was the issue. This was the issue at the Jerusalem meetup. It wasn't about talking about the commonalities of the resurrection or anything like apologists say. They were looking at, we have all these Gentiles coming to the faith. What do we do with them? Okay, so that's the issue. And I agree with Paul. I don't think this is as friendly as they think it is. There's definitely some stuff in Galatians 1 and 2 that I would say Paul is kind of going his own direction. Like he might have been considered the first splinter off of whatever the apostles were teaching in Jerusalem. If you take all this as factual history, which that's my first problem with all of this is, the accounts are a little bit, we don't know who wrote them and all that jazz. So there you go. Yeah.
All told stories and laughed and hugged and left on the same page. But when I read these chapters, I see nothing but hostility between Paul and the men who knew Jesus. Our interpretations are so vastly different, I was starting to feel gaslit.
He makes me feel like I'm the crazy one.
Despite reassurances from Bart Ehrman that I'm seeing things correctly.
In my judgment, he did not go to consult with Peter about the historical Jesus. He went there because he wanted apostolic support for his mission to the Gentiles. Peter was the head of the church in Jerusalem. Paul was converting Gentiles and telling them they didn't have to become Jewish. He knew that there were other people, especially the leadership in Jerusalem, that disagreed with him, and he went in order to work that out with them so that they would support his mission. And so it wasn't about finding information about Jesus. So that's the first thing. I don't think he was sitting there taking notes from Peter about it.
I've recently started...
Okay. I got to stop there. Bart is absolutely correct. Okay. That's my same observation too now when I read first, when I look at the whole Jerusalem Council in Acts and you look at what Paul says about it in Galatians, I hate to say it, but they weren't there to have a kumbaya, sit around the campfire and just, strum the guitar and sing Christian hymns. There was a major disagreement about what to do with Gentiles that were believing in Jesus. And this is what Paul went there. He was the apostle to the Gentiles, a title he gave himself. And he was there to make his case against the other people that said, no, they got to come in, they got to be circumcised, they got to go through they got to start following the Jewish law. And Paul was pushing back against that. So Peter and Paul were on opposite sides of the table. I think Peter was actually on the side of the table of we Jews are still superior, because if Paul's words are to be believed, Paul got after Peter for not eating with Gentiles when his Jewish friends were around. Like he only, like, I'm friends and buddies with the outside group only when my inside group friends aren't around. And Paul gets after him for that, as I recall. And so it's like, the Jerusalem Council was not a time where they were sitting there trying to get their resurrection stories straight. Okay. This was a time where you had a schism in the church that was threatening the unity of the church. And so they were going after it head to head. One side represented their side, one side represented the other side. Paul was on the side of, you don't have to chop off your foreskin to be a member of the church. Yes. So, but yes, when you read into, like, and Elizabeth makes the best point here, and I make it and Paul makes it, when you read into the text at that point, this whole resurrection narrative, which isn't even there. It's like there's no discussion about the resurrection of Jesus. Either it's a foregone conclusion, or maybe they did talk about other things they had in common, but it's not recorded. And so it's pure hearsay and speculation at that point. And apologists gauge a lot of hearsay and speculation about what happened in Jerusalem Council. Whereas I'm looking at it and saying, no, this is a conflict that they needed resolved. The councils of the church, when you look at them historically, are always been to resolve some sort of conflict or some sort of problem. Okay, and this one was no exception, assuming, of course, it actually happened, which people go, that, so there's that. So, okay. Wow, Earl's going after someone. There we go. John of Patmos, the guy who wrote the book, was in the same camp as Peter. Yes. When you look at like the old time apostles, they were very much of the camp of, if Gentiles convert, they need to become Jewish. So the early apostles did not look at themselves as a separate movement from Judaism. This is one thing that really, what little we have of the story, you don't, and the tradition is that the early, there's like 8 apostles. I question whether they even existed or they're just filler, because they don't really appear anywhere else. But a lot of these old time ones, they definitely wanted people when they converted to come into the faith and start doing the Jewish law and all this other stuff. And Paul was on the other side of that. Like, and it's a smart move. If you're going to bring in Gentiles, don't try to make them do the Old Testament law. The circumcision thing is going to keep people away, for one, but but there's just going to be a whole bunch of other stuff. So yes. So there's that. But yes. So, Paul is making a very valid point. Bart Ehrman just made a very valid point. Galatians 1 and 2 is not your friend, Christians. It really isn't. This idea that Paul and Peter sat down and had this resurrection discussion just isn't there. It's massive eisegesis, okay, to read into something there that isn't there. So just be advised, this is
reading Galatians commentaries exclusively from Christian scholars in preparation for this chapter in the book I'm working on. So Gary asks, why did Paul go? For scholars, the key issue is what Paul meant when he said he went to visit Cephas. In Greek, hysteresis kaphon. Christian scholars like F.F. Bruce, James Dunn, and others have extensively debated this verb hystereo. While it can mean to inquire information from, when used with a personal object, as here, it more commonly means simply to get acquainted with or to visit. As Christopher Tuckett notes, choosing the inquiry meaning would actually contradict Paul's entire argument in this passage, that he wasn't dependent on human instruction for his gospel. Paul's argument throughout Galatians 1 and 2 is precisely that his gospel came through direct revelation from Christ, not from the Jerusalem apostles.
Correct. I want to stop there because Paul makes an excellent point here. When I read commentaries from Galatians, when I was studying Galatians in Bible college, this came up a lot. Like, what did he mean? Well, yeah, sure, they might have shot the breeze about a lot of things, but they were just trying to get to know each other, and they had a major church issue that they wanted to discuss, which started to dominate their time. I've been to a lot of church councils. Okay, when I was in the Assemblies of God, we had our council meetings and all that crap, and at a district level, at a sectional level, I would go to these things, And usually there's, a bunch of things on the docket. And no, I didn't discuss the resurrection of Jesus or the commonality of the stuff we had. We discussed the issues. And human beings are like that. When you go to these type of religious councils, it's like they get together and you're trying to discuss the issues, not necessarily what you have in common. So what is meant by that? The problem, of course, with that simple 2-word phrase is, getting to know each other kind of thing, is that is very, very general and very, very open. Okay. And the other great point is that Paul makes a very good point in a lot of his writings, that his version of the gospel didn't come from the apostles. It came from direct revelation from Christ. Okay. To him, his gospel was the true one, not because it came from the other apostles who experienced it. Paul believed that his gospel was the true one because he got it directly from Jesus. Okay. Like it was him, getting revelation from God himself about what the truth was. And so even if Peter and Paul had disagreed about something in the resurrection, Paul might have fought him about it. It's like, Paul, yeah, it came from revelation. So yes, it's revelation. Yes. So there's yeah, Paul did have a habit of doing a lot of things like that. Circumcision without anesthesia sounds awful. No wonder the Gentiles don't want to go through with it. Yes. But yes, this is a great point about Galatians, is that Paul makes, the Apostle Paul makes a lot of claims here about the fact that he got his gospel not from the will of man, but from the will of God. He says that a lot in his writings, his authenticated writings. So it's like, I don't see how you get there and say, oh, yeah, I'm going to just change my view that I think I'm getting from God because Peter says so. I don't think that's going to work. And Paulogia makes a great point here. So, okay, there we go. I knew somebody would get to some of the related jokes, but yes.
As Douglas Moo observes, Paul is responding to charges that he was dependent on and subordinate to the apostles at Jerusalem. The structure of his defense shows he's minimizing, not emphasizing, any learning from them. Consider the details Paul emphasizes. He waited 3 whole years before going to Jerusalem, stayed only 15 days, and saw only Peter and James. Paul even backs this with a solemn oath, hardly necessary if he was proudly describing theological education. The travel argument Gary makes actually supports Paul's point. As Martinus de Boer notes, Paul is showing his independence from Jerusalem. If he truly needed their instruction, why wait 3 years for such a long journey? Paul explicitly states his purpose for the second visit in Galatians 2:2, to present his gospel to ensure he wasn't running in vain. This wasn't about learning content, but about securing recognition and unity for his mission. As Craig Keener and others observe, Paul was seeking acknowledgement of the fundamental unity of their distinct missions. The scholarly consensus, reflected in commentaries by Bruce, Dunn, Longnecker, and others, is that Paul's visits were about establishing fellowship and gaining recognition for his independent mission, not about receiving theological instruction.
Okay, I want to stop right there. Yes, if you read Galatian commentaries, and I remember reading quite a few, and he doesn't mention some of the ones I read, but they all kind of came up with this idea that Paul was trying to defend his apostolic mission to the Gentiles. Okay, he wasn't there to receive instruction about, what the faith was and what he should be doing. He was there to make a point. Okay, he believed he got his own stuff from God directly, and he was not going to back down on that. Okay, his whole thing was, I've done all this stuff, I've done all this work with the Gentiles, I've brought in all these people into the faith, and I don't want to feel like I ran in vain. Okay, and he does give a solemn oath, like, I wasn't there to be this little student underneath all these other guys. I'm not here to do that. Okay. I was here to present, Paul is saying, I was here to present my case. This is why when apologetics people want to use this as like First Galatians 1 and 2 as their friend, it's not. It's quite the opposite. Like, Paul was not there to discuss the resurrection. He was there to defend his case, and he only stayed there for 15 days. And so he's, sure, there's a lot of breaking bread fellowship at these councils and stuff like that, but he was there to talk to everybody he could talk to about his mission and what he was doing with the Gentiles. He wasn't there to get instruction from anybody. Okay, 15 days is not long enough time to get instruction on everything, in my opinion, anyway. So it's like he is definitely not there to sit there and listen to Peter tell him what to do. Okay, he's not there for that at all. And so, yeah. So, yeah, it's not. I'm sorry, apologists. These two chapters are not your friend when it comes to the resurrection, because they're not there to hash out doctrine other than what do we do with these new Gentiles. And that's what they were there to hash out. Paul waits 3 years before he does anything. That 3-year gap is not indicative. Oh, why was he in such a hurry? 3 years is not a hurry. Okay. Especially back then when people didn't live as long. Okay. 3 years is a long time to a lot of these people. And he didn't zip down there right away to get instruction or any of that crap. Okay. He waited a whole 3 years. He finally goes there, and it's a controversial issue. Come on. Like, this is not what, I don't know. It's just really bad. It's like, yes, he was probably, Fred puts it the best way. Paul wanted to improve his grift and not be instructed. Like, he was, that's the way I would look at it. He is definitely, pushing the idea that this is the apologist stuff. This is, where I'm trying to prove that my mission to the Gentiles, they don't have to follow all the Old Testament law, is true. And there were other people that opposed him on this. Okay. The Judaizers is what he describes them as, but they're like, you got to be circumcised to be part of the faith. And it's like, what? And he's like, no, we don't have to do that. We couldn't follow the law either. Why would you want to put this burden on the Gentile believers? And so we get this first idea of that the Old Testament law isn't as applicable, okay, to Gentile believers as it is to Jewish ones. So, yeah. Tabar's book, Paul and Jesus, and he spends most of the chapter discussing this and threatens to come back to it later. He says the same thing as Ehrman and Paul. Yes, exactly. And that's the real thing, Philbert, is that when you look at First Galatians 1 and 2 and you read those chapters, that ain't a chapter about Paul saying, hey, I went there to be instructed. It's what I went there to fight these guys, okay, on an issue that's important to me. And that's why it's not apologist friends. The apologists think that this is their friend. It's not. It's quite possibly a very antithetical passage to the idea that they had similar resurrection accounts. So, and this has influence on some of the quote unquote minimal facts for them, but it points out that Paulogia's theory about the minimal witnesses has a lot of weight to it, because you have just two people being very influential in the church, Peter among the Jews and Paul among the Gentiles, and that explains why Christianity exploded. I think Paul, if you look at it from an organizational point of view, Paul opening up the faith to the Gentiles and then reducing the restrictions that people had to follow God is a brilliant move that's going to absolutely get a whole bunch more people in. And Christianity owes a lot of its early growth to Paul. This is why I do think Paul is an existent historical figure, and it's pretty verified in other things. But it's like, it's Christianity opens up to the Gentiles what was previously only available to the Jewish believer, and it's a brilliant move to get church growth. It really is. You just change your theology and change your doctrine, and bam. So there's that. Yes, please hit the like button. Yes, we don't condone violence against the like button, but the like button is, shall we say, very consensual. So very, very consensual. Yes. So yeah, the like button we refer to as she, and she is very, very consensual. So thank you very much. So there, make sure we get that done. All right, but yes, this is where we're at. Like, we don't The scholarly consensus among Galatians is not that they were there to, Paul wasn't there to receive instruction. He was there to make a case. And that's exactly what happened.
Gary's interpretation actually undermines Paul's central argument for his apostolic independence.
And the first part of that is it required that we see Paul, the mature gospel message. No, I don't think that's true either, because in Galatians chapter 2, Paul lays the gospel, he says, I laid out the gospel message I was preaching, and they agreed with me. To me, what I see is Peter, James, the brother of Jesus. By the way, John is in Galatians 2, the second trip. And Paul, the four biggest names in Christian history, they all agreed on the nature of the gospel. So I can't see anybody was preaching the true gospel and the other ones weren't. I don't see that at all in the text.
Gary's new claim is that Paul laid out the gospel message, and they agreed with me, somehow proves universal gospel agreement. But this actually reinforces my original point about Gary misreading Paul's argument. The scholars agree that Paul's purpose was not to demonstrate agreement on content, but seeking affirmation for his Gentile mission. Gary's phrased, they all agreed on the nature of the gospel, misses what Paul meant by the truth of the gospel in this context. According to commentators, this specifically refers to Gentile freedom, the principle that Gentiles don't need circumcision to be saved. This agreement wasn't about resurrection content, but legitimizing Paul's non-Jewish theology.
Okay, yes, and that's exactly, like, Habermas is completely missing the point of what Paul is trying to say. When I read Paul in 1st and 2nd Galatians, and I just listened to Habermas and what he said about it, I'm like, have you really read this text? Paul is not there. Just because they agreed about the essentials of the gospel doesn't mean they agreed about everything. Okay, like, you can have disagreements theologically speaking, and most of us that have come out of the church, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can have non-essential, what you consider non-essential doctrines, have disagreement, but he had created this entire ministry, and now there were a bunch of people in Jerusalem saying his ministry was illegitimate. And so, yes, that's what he was going down. He wanted the agreement that what he was doing was correct, but he wasn't going to stop if they disagreed. I'm going to tell you right now, given what you read about Paul and you get some of his personality from reading his writings, if they had disagreed with him, he would have still continued and he would have said that they were wrong. Okay, he wasn't there to be corrected, but the idea that they didn't have different gospels by this time, that's just nonsensical. You're going to have all kinds of splinter groups with any religion very quickly. I've demonstrated that with Fangs more than once. Like, there's all kinds of different doctrines about Fangs now. Just ask some of the people in chat, and the official canon is being written as we speak in the Misadventures of Fangs, but I am sure some of you are going to disagree with some of the things that Sam. So there's that. But yes. So there's that. But yes, points out that Luke and Acts sugarcoat this meeting, but Paul in his letter said it wasn't a good time. Yes. Acts kind of gets you this idea that everybody just saying kumbaya and came to the decision, yeah, we'll let them have it. And they still have to do these 4 things. But Paul's letter to the Galatians doesn't indicate that at all. It was not a good time for him. Like, he was there and it was a fight for 15 days. Like, he was like, until he finally got a decision. So yeah, that's possible too. Paul is kind of a weird duck. He's a very mystical person, but his claim was that, hey, I got my crap right directly from Jesus. So there's that. Yeah, he wanted his independence. There's a good case for that. I think Paul is very important to Christianity than Jesus ever was. I think if it hadn't been for Paul and his ministry to the Gentiles and bringing in Gentile believers, I very honestly think that Christianity would have died as just another messianic cult that died in Jerusalem, and we wouldn't have even heard anything about it. I don't know what religion we would be, probably still pagans, but it's like, yeah, we don't call it Polyany. Yes, craziest person usually wins arguments. Yeah, because nobody wants to argue with a crazy person. It's counterproductive. So,
according to Craig Keener, Paul strategically wanted to show that the Jerusalem apostles recognized Paul as being genuinely called and equipped by God to bring the gospel to the nations, but they neither taught him what the gospel was, nor corrected his perception of it. So Gary's interpretation, that this proves everyone preached the same gospel, actually contradicts Paul's rhetorical purpose, which was to establish his independence while securing recognition and finances for his Gentile ministry. Gary is making these chapters about resurrection when the experts affirm my lifelong understanding in plain reading that they are not. Anyone following?
Yes, this is not, the thing about this meeting is it was not about the resurrection. If you read the resurrection into this, that's exactly what you're doing. You're reading into the text, okay? It's massive eisegesis. Almost every commentary I've ever read on Galatians makes this point that it's definitely about Paul getting a head pat, basically, that your ministry is good, and yes, bringing in the Gentiles is a good thing, all that stuff. Okay. It's just I studied Galatians in Bible college and I read a lot of commentaries, and I never heard this discussion of, they were just here to discuss the resurrection. That's apologetics superimposing their eisegetical interpretation on the text. I'm sorry, Gary Habermas and his interpretation of the text is very, very wrong. Okay, there's nothing there about the resurrection. So it was just, no, it's not there. And I just don't understand. There's a need, I think, for a lot of apologists to have this be a kumbaya meeting where everybody agreed with each other, but that was not the case. The writer of Acts kind of, he holy washes it, so to speak, and makes it look like everybody came into agreement in it back in the old days in the first couple chapters of Acts. Whereas Paul, when he describes this meeting, it's not a good time. Mighty Philbert had a great observation from, Tabor. It wasn't a good time. Okay, it wasn't a good time. All right, it was not that for him. Okay, so that's the problem. Okay, and so there's that. But yes, he was very fanatical and very stubborn. So there you go.
My regular assault on Gary's minimal facts knows that I have a problem with the specific phrasing of his second and third facts. Gary says the disciples had experiences, which is ambiguous. Does the disciples mean all the disciples, or does it mean some of the disciples? For Gary, it's both. Since skeptical scholars affirm some disciples, he can affirm skeptical scholars affirm some disciples, and then when he's out preaching, he can let the congregation assume that the disciples means all 12, when it does not. I changed the word the to some in Facts 2 and 3 to avoid any mistaken impression that Gary's scholars defend that all of the disciples reported experiences. Gary's books themselves defend only some disciples, so I prefer the disambiguation for precision.
Okay, yes. That's one of my problems with the minimal facts as well. I would back Paulogia on that one because it is ambiguous. I have other problems with those minimal facts that go even deeper than that, but the wording is actually very, very bad. Okay, because you don't actually, even in the gospel accounts, have all the apostles seeing the risen Jesus until you get to John, which is the last gospel of the four to be written. And I think that's an apologetical story that's added. Okay, I think there's a tradition being added there to kind of, all the apostles saw it and everything, but then you still have unbelief. And as Bart Ehrman has pointed out recently, if the resurrection was so universally believed by the disciples, why did they all have doubts? Why in the end, even when Jesus is standing up there getting ready to ascend into heaven, is the phrase "some were doubtful" still there? I'm not trying to be rude, but there's definitely a problem with saying all the apostles believed, all the disciples believed, because that's just not true even given the text. So I'm not, even basic literary analysis tells me that, yes, there's a problem. And I agree with Paulogia on this one. These two facts need to be rewritten to say some. The problem is when Habermas goes out into the public, he just leaves the wording ambiguous. And so everybody's left to the assumption, all the disciples believed and all the disciples this. And it's not the case. Okay. It's very dishonest. in basically taking the stance some and all as both, like, yes, I agree with both of those. Like either some of them saw it or all of it. All of them had experiences or some of them had experiences. You can't walk the line there very easily and say both. So there's that. Yes, doubt is a synonym for absolutely sure. Maybe. Ice Jesus. I don't know if I want to redo the song. Oh, religion are not their dogma and doctrines. Each individual will accept. Yes, there's a lot of truth to that. But yes, and it's Paulogia is just making a great point that Pacts 2 and 3 just are ambiguous. Like the problem that I have with a large amount of the minimal facts isn't language. Paulogia's problem with them is language. My problem is what they're based on. Okay, like the fact that almost all the minimal facts are based on what the Bible says, and the Bible itself can be questioned as to whether it's factual, kind of puts a big question mark behind all of them to me. Like the fact that a good chunk of these minimal facts are based on, for the Bible tells me so. If I had Paul's jingle, I'd play it. But it's like, it's the same crap. Like it's not, it has the same problem as any quote unquote fact you want to bring up from the Bible, especially the New Testament, especially the Gospels and the book of Acts. It's like there's this big question mark that I have because of the authorship being anonymous and the sources for all the stories being anonymous. Okay. It's just they're just collections of stories that Christians were telling. There's no verification of any of them. And so I have a problem with all these minimal facts when I read them, like, well, where are these facts outside of the Bible? Like the first one is a good example, like Jesus Christ died by crucifixion. Now, where is that said? Okay, the Gospels. And the Gospels are anonymous with anonymous sources. And so I don't have any more truth that Jesus was crucified on a cross than Hercules did his labors. Like it's just hard for me, knowing what I know now, to accept the minimal facts when I know that the whole foundation on which they're based, the Bible and Gospels themselves, are questionable. And I also have to say that some of these minimal facts, and I'm going to do a video on this, so I'll explain this a little bit more in detail. It's my first video when I come back doing videos, probably sometime very early in October. I'm setting a deadline for myself for that. So it's going to be on the minimal facts and why I don't accept them. And one of my other reasons is, like, what do some of these facts actually have to do with the actual resurrection of Jesus? Okay, what does this have to do with the resurrection of Jesus? Okay, Jesus died by crucifixion. The only thing that would establish for the resurrection is that Jesus was dead. I can accept that Jesus died, that's a fact. Hell, I can even put him up on a cross and have him killed by the Romans. But that doesn't have anything to do with whether or not the power of God came onto his body later and rose him from the dead. Okay, a lot of people die. Everybody dies eventually, It's like, that doesn't prove that they're raised from the dead. What does this have to do with the resurrection? Okay, and there's nearly all the minimal facts have that problem, all of them. So it's like, there you go. So thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. 53rd birthday. All right. Well, I'm a little ahead of you. I'll tell you that the road ahead doesn't get easier. I will tell you that. So, but thank you very much. Appreciate it. That's one. All right. Yes, Paul could not accept Peter's version. It was not flexible enough. His grift required more. Yes. And when I look at it from a ministry point of view, Fred, yes, this is why Paul starts including the Gentiles, and he starts to dummy down the doctrine and water it down. You have to that. So, yes, happy birthday, young whippersnapper. There you go. All right. But I'm a little bit ahead of you there. So, but happy birthday, Kevin. Appreciate you. Appreciate you donating to the channel. Appreciated always. So, but yes. So, yes, I don't know. I too have a problem with the language of 2 and 3 of the minimal facts, but my problems with them go much, much deeper. So, well, there we go.
Scholars admit that the disciples believed Jesus had risen from the dead. The disciples believed it.
It's virtually unanimous. It's going to be, I don't put percentage. People think I put percentages on the minimal facts. I don't, but I would think high 90s of critical scholars. Bart Ehrman doesn't hesitate to say the disciples believed Jesus was raised from the dead and believed that they saw him. And Bart Ehrman even says, why shouldn't I be willing to say this? It's a historical fact. He says that.
Yes, Bart affirms that some disciples believed that they saw him. He does not hold that all 12, or even most of the disciples, believed they personally saw a risen Jesus.
Some of the others, we don't know if all of the disciples even believed it. We don't know. We have all these stories, in the New Testament of the disciples doubting. Why do you have all these stories about them doubting? Why don't they just believe it? Well, probably because some of them doubted it.
I have to comment on that because it's like, it's when Habermas says most critical scholars, we now know that they're not critical scholars. Okay. I know of many like secular historical scholars that study the Gospels as ancient literature, literally don't even think that they're real. Like they're not historical. Like I don't see Habermas mentioning all the scholars who literally dismiss Jesus as a historical figure and put him in the same vein as Hercules and Perseus and the rest of the yeses. Okay. It's like, you need to understand there is a large school of thought among scholarly circles that study the Bible. Like once you get rid of the affirmation thing of you got to sign this piece of paper that you won't say anything against the doctrine of the church in your scholarship. Once you get past that and get away from that and get into people that actually study the book that don't have that hanging over their head, Jesus becomes either a growing legend or wasn't even historical. It was a mythical figure that these people believed in. Okay. And they used a lot of mythology from different myths. Like there's many historical scholars that they look at like the book of Acts and they'll say, oh, yep, there's Homer's Odyssey. They will literally pick it apart and tell you that the early Christians that wrote that stuff took myths and other things from other stories and wove it together with their own narrative and made a unique narrative because it was Christian, but they took the same themes and stories. So when Habermas says that, and he's referring to his book 3, which we've already established is almost 80% non-critical scholars, he's kind of talking out his ass at that point, okay? Because, for him to say 90% agree that everybody believed in the resurrection, so yeah, that's great, but I would have to ask, so what? A lot of people believe a lot of things, doesn't make it true. To me, belief is one of the most useless ways to assess whether somebody is true. And polling a whole bunch of people, do you believe in this? Doesn't make it true. There are a lot of people that still believe in God. Doesn't make it true. Okay, belief and faith do not make things true. Okay, I know a lot of religious people don't like that, but there's a lot of religious people that believe in things counter to other religious people. Belief doesn't make it true. Okay. And so, yes, I can sit there and say, yes, if I believe the stories, okay, sure. A lot of the disciples, some of the disciples believed they had seen Jesus risen from the dead, but that absolutely fits with post-grieving hallucinogenic things where people to this day, like 1 out of 10 people that are very close to somebody will see that person alive after they've died. They will have that experience. And to think that ancient people who are already open to this kind of superstitious stuff wouldn't have seen that in more abundance, sure they would have. Okay, you don't need a mass hallucinogenic thing to have a group of people start like this. You just need to have, yeah, you love the Isis one. yes, all the Isis. Yeah, Phil is one of my favorite characters in all of Disney. I love him. But yes, it's so what that they believed. Okay. I also have to say, just because the apostles believed it happened, that still doesn't prove the actual event, that the power of God came on Jesus's dead body and raised it from the dead. You need evidence for that. Just because a bunch of people believe it happened doesn't mean it actually did happen. Okay, a lot of people believe that Vishnu moved an entire village to save it. Did that mean that that historically happened? No. Okay, just because a bunch of people believe something doesn't make it true. Okay, it's why faith and belief are very useless when it comes to discerning truth. Okay, it's just that I don't know. God might be necrophilic. Gosh, you just gave me another idea for my book. Oh my goodness. I don't know if we're going to be able to publish this book, Earl. You believe in Ed Rabyd? I think of reasonable evidence. I could still be wrong, but the likelihood is very low. There you go. Yeah, I mean, but your belief in that case, it's more than belief, though. You have evidence of my existence. Okay, I'm on YouTube. You could send somebody to verify. Hell, if you had the money, you could. So I don't know. I don't know that that's going to happen. But yes, I have more evidence for my existence than Jesus does. Okay, and you can verify my existence. I can't do that with Jesus. I can't do that with the resurrection. And no matter how much faith or belief I have, that's still true. Okay, so I won't forget that one. I've actually thought about that one. So yes, Jesus, Yahweh being interested in dead bodies, maybe that's why he kills so many people. So because he's necrophilic. So oh, but yes, this is a very notable point here that they're making, that why do so many doubt if all of them saw it? I made this point earlier, I'll make it again. So
I think it's possible that not all 11 disciples came to believe that Jesus was raised from the dead based on their own experiences, but that they had heard from others that Jesus had been raised and they believed them.
Bart even did a course earlier this year called The Other Doubting Thomas. Did Jesus' disciples actually believe in the resurrection? And the second lecture covered Bart's reasons why some of Jesus' followers probably never believed in the resurrection. Be precise, Gary. Don't conflate and pretend you have the support where you don't. But of course, in other interviews, Gary seems to know this.
Okay, so is their explanation for why they believed it hallucinations? Is that the primary one?
Well, Bart Ehrman might disagree on this, but I think that in earlier works, he leaned toward hallucination.
In Bart's 6-hour debate with Mike Licona on the resurrection, he explained his position.
You have these accounts abundantly attested that Paul saw Jesus, Peter saw Jesus, Mary, and I think probably these three people, I think you could say they saw something that they, as Mike said, that they interpreted as being Jesus. What about others? We don't have good accounts. Do you need supernatural interventions for somebody to have seen something that wasn't there? Mike called those hallucinations. I'm okay with hallucinations. I prefer to call them visions.
Virtually no.
okay, this is what apologetics misses, and Habermas misses this one a lot. The whole point of the minimal witnesses hypothesis is not that we're saying that this is what is true. Paulogia isn't saying this is what happened. What he's simply saying is this is all a response to how could the explosive growth of Christianity happen if the resurrection wasn't real? And despite the fact there are a ton of religions that have had explosive growth without a resurrection of Jesus or a historical figure, that seems to go right over their heads. That religions grow for a lot of very documented reasons goes right over their heads too. Anybody who studies the cultural anthropology of religions knows that religions grow for a lot of different reasons, and usually they're culturally based. The whole point of these is to point out alternatives. When the apologist says there is no other alternative than Jesus rose from the dead, and I raise my hand and I say I can think of 500 of them, I may be being over. It's not. I'm not trying to be rude there, Habermas. I'm simply pointing out that just because you can't see it in your incredulity doesn't mean that other people. When we talk about hallucinogenic experiences with the disciples, it's only necessary that a small group of them actually have those experiences. What's also necessary is other people start to believe them. Now they doubt, and it's in the text that they doubted. Okay, that there wasn't universal belief at first. And you don't really get a universal belief, even with the book of John, who tries to make it happen. But there's still not this universal, all the disciples believed. You only need Peter to have an experience that he believed was Jesus. You only need Paul to have a genuine experience that he believed was Jesus, and then them promoting that and people believing it for Christianity to come about. You don't need an actual resurrection for the religion to be successful. Okay, there are tons of religions out there that are very successful that don't have a resurrection of Jesus, and there's good reasons for it. I'm sorry, I've exaggerated, but but it's like, I'm not trying to be rude with these things. The problem that Habermas and a lot of apologists have is they get hung up on these experiences, on these visions, as Ertman calls them. But there's like a whole bunch of things that could go together to make this religion successful. You have the key players believe that they have this experience. Like, I don't dismiss like somebody like Mary Magdalene also having the experience like she has in John. Yes, if she was very close to Jesus, and we don't really know how close Mary Magdalene and Jesus were, if she is having that kind of experience too, she would have been very influential on the women starting to believe because she had this experience. Peter and Paul having these experiences, Peter to the Jewish believers, Paul to the Gentile believers. When you look at it, there's a very naturalistic, 100% natural reason why Christianity could have taken off. You don't need a resurrection. And that's what the whole point of minimal witnesses or any other alternative explanation is. It's simply pointing out to you, you don't have a 100% case that it's the resurrection of Jesus that caused this. There's many other reasons that could have all gone together, all knit together, all that stuff that would have made for the success of Christianity. It's like when you look at other religions and see how they've been successful, it's like apologists just put blinders on. They like cover their eyes as to thinking that the reason that they think those other religions are successful and grew might also apply to their own. They don't want to accept that fact. Yes. So there's that. But yes, I'm not trying to say, when we make up these theories, we're not trying to say that, this is what actually happened. What we're saying, there's a lot of different factors that go into a religion developing and successfully going forward. And it doesn't have to be a resurrection story. Okay, it doesn't have to have that. All Paul is saying is all I need is Peter to believe for the Jews and Paul to believe for the Gentiles. And heck, let's throw Mary Magdalene or one of the women in there that was influential among the women. And all of a sudden you have the necessary influential figures who very much strongly believe they saw something, when really it could have been, a post-grieving experience, okay, where you see your loved one who is departed after the fact. There's lots of people to this day that have that experience. It's well documented. And so you can't just dismiss it with the wave of a hand here, okay? We're not saying, Habermas likes to talk about the mass hallucination. That's just ridiculous. You don't need a mass hallucination. You just need a couple of people to have experience that sincerely believe them. I am a former Pentecostal. In a Pentecostal church, this happens all the time, that people will have a experience with God. Other people who respect those people believe that they have experience, and then they start having it too. Okay, or saying that they have it too, so they don't want to be left behind. I'm not trying, it's like, come on, man. There's plenty of explanations of why your religion came about that don't have anything to do with a resurrection. You don't have to have it. Okay, and this is something that I think Habermas just keeps missing, and other people who want to dismiss religion, they take them on one at a time. Okay, and I think in the later part of this video we might get to next week, that's kind of where we're going. Like, the apologists take on all these one at a time and they dismiss them one at a time, and they don't seem to realize that there's a whole thing that could be affecting an entire community of people from multiple, like, one apostle may have believed because Peter said so. Another apostle believes because Mary Magdalene said she had an experience. Another apostle said, had an experience because everybody else is having an experience. And then you create this atmosphere for bias okay, and open yourself up to have these experiences yourself, doesn't make them true. Have you ever seen things you should never believe? Yeah. Well, I can tell you one message from the preachers that you should never believe is you're giving to God's work when you give to my ministry. Okay. Yeah, you're not. Okay, you're just giving to the guy's. But yes, I'm. When I was a Pentecostal, this is why Habermas's incredulity on this just drives me insane. Okay, because when I was a Pentecostal, I saw a lot of people believe things very sincerely, and that caused other people who hadn't had the same experience to believe them, even though they had never had the experience themselves. They like, oh, yeah, I can see where that would happen to somebody. And when you grow up and are indoctrinated to believe a lot of superstitious stuff, which honestly, ancient people were much more superstitious than, say, Westerners in the Western world, and still superstition persists in large parts of the world. When you're brought up to accept those things and indoctrinated to accept those things, when something happens that seems like you can't explain it, it's very easy to give it a mystical turn. And the problem I have with Habermas at this point is he just needs to go to a Pentecostal church for a little while and realize how quickly and easily people can believe anything. Like, I've told the story many times. I've had one lady come in and she got prayed for a headache she had, and then later, 3 days later, she reported the headache had gone away. All of a sudden, 2 weeks to 2 months later, we suddenly, she went up for a brain tumor and the tumor disappeared, and all these added things. It's a living proof of you can prime the pump, so to speak, for belief, and then people, once the key people in the church start having it happen to them and believe it happens, other people follow along. Same thing could have happened in the early church with Peter and a few other disciples with the rest of the disciples. Like, it's absolutely the same. But I would never believe that somebody is saying up there, I have the power of God. Never believe that for a second. Always look for the sleight of hand. So, yes, God needs your money. Believe in it, but they both well enough to write a musical about the last weeks of Jesus' leg. Yes. I was definitely in this heavy spiritual world stuff, and I can absolutely see it. See, and this is the problem. Like, Habermas wants to pretend that same kind of stuff that exists today, where people can be heavily indoctrinated into spiritual word stuff, didn't exist with the disciples. Like, somehow they were all these skeptics that had to be convinced that Jesus was alive. And it's like, no, it's not hard to convince people that are superstitious about superstitious things. Okay. It really isn't it. So yeah. Maybe, I don't know. Oh my gosh. Somebody else said something back here. Yes. The argument from Boinking. Yes. It's one of my favorite arguments. Oh my goodness. But yes. Oh, but there's that. But yes, I don't know, but yes, it's frustrating to me because he doesn't seem to understand the basic reason that criticism exists is to show the things that he needs to find good reasons to get rid of, so that the only conclusion that we can draw is the resurrection. The problem is that's not the case, and he just doesn't want to deal with it.
Skeptical scholar in a relevant field, almost none of them will ever say the disciples didn't believe in the resurrection. Berman, who's
okay. That most scholars in a relevant field will say some of the disciples believe. I think Paulogia's change in wording is actually more reflective of what scholars believe. Yeah, sure. The disciples, when you look at it, yeah, they believed it. If I was doing just a literary analysis of the Gospels, you get some of the disciples believing it, but others doubting. Sorry, it's not as clear cut and dry even in the Gospels. So, yeah, that's not correct.
Probably the best known skeptic in North America, one of the best known ones in the world. Yeah. He says in one of his books, he said, some, maybe all of the apostles believed that Jesus was raised from the dead.
Art affirms some. Again, stick to the facts.
They had experiences which
Doesn't
they
say all.
thought were risen appearances of Jesus. He said, am I afraid to say that? He said, I reject it, but I'm not afraid to say it because history shows it to be true. History shows it to be true. So I think they're not going to go after the 6 facts.
No, but we're going to go after your deliberately ambiguous wording because it allows
Yes. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paulogia.
for confusion. Change these to say some disciples, Gary. Not the disciples, some disciples. And while we're on the topic of not all the 12 were believers, Gary comes shockingly close to discussing the minimal witnesses hypothesis.
There aren't a lot of people who took this view, but there were a few major ones in the last few decades, since about 1970, who took the view that Peter had an experience. One very well-known skeptic says it could have been as simple as something he saw. He really could have seen something, or it could be as simple as an insight. Hey, I wonder if Jesus is alive. Man, this is really starting to click. He said he was going to be on the right hand of the Father. What if he is? If he's on the right hand of the Father and is who he claimed to be, pre-existent and the Son of God and all this, and he can forgive sin and rise from the dead, and whoever believes in him can rise from the dead, then I guess that when I thought I saw him the other day, it makes perfect sense that I saw him the other day. See, the guy said it could be as small as really seeing something that wasn't Jesus and thinking it was, or it could be as small as an insight.
Yes, exactly. The minimal witnesses hypothesis does not stand or fall on the nature of Peter's experience. A hallucination, an illusion, a delusion, an insight, or as you just suggested, some kind of vision followed by a period of insight. Nailing down which it was makes no difference at all. These options.
Okay, and yes, that's kind of the whole point of the minimal witnesses. It doesn't really matter if it was a hallucinogenic experience, whether it was an insight. At some point, the influential figure in the group has this quote unquote revelation, and it changes the way they look at things. And so that's kind of the way it is. And thanks, Ron, for the gifted membership. Who got that? Yes, Blaster Master 80. Oh, that's a good one. That was a good one. Thank you. Thank you, Ron. Appreciate it. But yes, it doesn't require that these people actually saw risen Jesus. They just had to come up with some sort of idea about Jesus. They could have even had the insight of, maybe the resurrection is metaphorical. Like Jesus is gone, but his teachings need to be preserved. And so if we connect it with the idea of the hope of a resurrection, you could do it. The whole point of minimal witnesses or any other theory that counters the Christian claim is there is options out there that don't require Jesus to walk out of the tomb that could still explain why Christianity developed, grew, and became the success it was. Okay, there are other religions out there like Islam and Hinduism and Buddhism that are very successful religions, and they have their own naturalistic theories about why they came. And probably most Christians will say, yeah, that's how those religions developed. What most Christians don't want to do, though, is apply that directly to their own religion. Like, oh, is it possible that this was my religion too? That Christianity also had a very naturalistic development. It doesn't require this grand, glorious, where they have this hallucinogenic experience with risen Jesus. That doesn't require that at all. It just has, you just have to have Peter. You can, and I'll go even more nefarious. Peter just says, okay, we lost our leader. How do I keep this going to keep the money flowing? Like, I'm sorry, that's a very real possibility. Like you look at more modern historical religions, such as the Mormons. Joseph Smith died. What did Brigham Young do? He took the religion and brought it to new heights because it was a good gig for him. It's like these religious figures keep things running. Okay, they keep them running for good reasons, okay, that are very personal. And so, yes, if we had a situation where Peter just saw Jesus crucified on a cross and he's not coming back, but Jesus made all these predictions about he's going to rise 3 days later, Jesus is buried in a mass grave, so the body's missing, and then Peter just comes out and says, I saw the risen Jesus. Okay, and because of his influence, other people believe, yeah, that's very feasible. And that's the problem that Habermas has. He doesn't seem to realize that this is very feasible. It's very feasible.
Merely show that there are plenty of ways that one person, like Peter, could have sincerely come to a belief that Jesus was risen in some sense. That's all we need. The focus is on how many, not how, because the how possibilities are plentiful, and the evidence is underdeterminate, as we have no direct report from Peter of any kind.
Now the problem's there. I said, no, you're switching to squash or something. You're going to another game. You have another set of rules or no rules.
This seems to be Gary's analogy for not adhering to the argumentation categories that he has set up arbitrarily. What's the matter with saying that the cause of Peter's belief is unknown, but here's an array of plausible and compatible scenarios?
Here's
Yes, and that's where Habermas, he has this very narrow-minded view of what can be accepted. Like, if I say that the cause of Peter's thing is unknown, Habermas, okay, I get that. Okay, but the moment you say the specific things that it could have been and it makes it more plausible, then that's when Habermas says, screw this. Okay, you guys are wrong. Your critics are wrong. It's like he doesn't want to accept the possible specifics that are very reasonable, but as long as you keep it fuzzy so he can keep his resurrection stuff fuzzy, he's all down with that. I've noticed that with him. You say, well, we don't really know what Peter's motivation is. He'll buy that, but he won't buy maybe Peter had an experience or had an idea or whatever that caused him to self-delude himself into thinking that Jesus was risen from the dead. Oh, I dismiss that. Can't be that. Even though it happens all the time today. This is literally very common today. Okay. In fact, I think we're seeing it in Habermas himself, but it's no matter what you say to those people, they still believe it because everything depends on it. Thanks, Fred. Oh, you're not going to keep Kevin's donos. I got 3. I'll count the donated gift membership for the hat, but we're running out of time for that. So maybe the hat thing will be all part of the new art. So stay tuned for the new art. We're going to keep that going. All right. But yeah, let's continue.
One problem. Peter goes and tells the rest of them that. And I don't care if somebody's there like that who's like doubting Thomas or not. There are doubters in a group that you're going to come up with. There's going to be some guys that say, prove it. They're going to say, do you have some evidence for this? And if all they can say is, I don't need evidence. I was just thinking it makes sense for Jesus, who said he was the Son of God, to be at the right hand of God.
It's been estimated that there have been over 10 billion Christians in the past 200 years. Even if you think there were 600 eyewitnesses of risen Jesus, that means that more than 9,999,999,000 Christians came to believe in the resurrection due to testimony. Is Gary seriously complaining that while testimony was good enough and convincing for 9 billion people, that it couldn't possibly be convincing to 10 men who were already invested and emotionally charged and primed to want to continue the ministry?
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Paulogia. Thank you, sir. That is the most brilliant way I've ever heard this said. It's like you literally also have in the story of doubting Thomas, Jesus making the statement, blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. Okay. It's like Habermas is oblivious to the story at this point because we literally have billions upon billions of people that believed without seeing a thing. And somehow it seems incredible that Peter could come to them and some of them would be skeptics and wouldn't believe. If we take the story seriously, we have doubting Thomas, okay, who believes, but then also gets given this line by Jesus, blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed, which absolutely keeps the faith going. Oh, now I get a special blessing because I don't see and I still believe. It is absolutely a cultic move. That is an absolute grade A, top of the line cult move. And Paulogia put it here brilliantly. We're supposed to be left with somehow 9+ billion people have accepted Christianity over the years without seeing Jesus or anything. But somehow it seems incredible that one man could convince 10 people. Like, come on. Come on, man. And Paulogia put it here so brilliantly. It was just well done. It's like, come on. It's like you don't really have good apologetical arguments, do you, Habermas? There are times when he says something that totally contradicts the text. And I'm sorry, the gospel texts show a lot of doubt among the disciples. And doubting Thomas is a good example of somebody who completely doubted and didn't believe. And then all of a sudden, wham, he believes. And then we have this little line that says, hey, you should believe it sight unseen. You're blessed if you do. Okay. So, yes. So it's really well spoken. Paulogia, well spoken.
By my hypothesis and Bart's affirmations, yeah, the historical data is consistent with almost all of the disciples not believing this resurrection claim and disappearing from reliable history back into mundane lives of fishing or something. Probably most did reject it. But if just one or two joined Peter based on his testimony, just like the 9 billion Christians who followed, then everything is explained. What's implausible here? If people believing...
Yes, what's implausible here? I gotta say it. It's like, and you don't even need all of these men in that room to accept the gospel. You just need the few to believe and go out, and then somebody to change the story later. Like a lot of these apostles disappear into obscurity. One of the possible theories is they didn't believe it, and they went back to their normal lives. They left the cult and went back to their normal lives. Doesn't change the fact that after that, Christianity grew among other people. You don't need other people if you're including all the Gentiles. You don't need other people if you're just including anybody that's willing to believe the story. Okay, you don't need the apostles, okay, unless you're trying later, a century later, trying to write a story where you need the apostles all to believe in order to make it more credible. See, I'm sorry. This is not incredible to believe that people could do this because you've got, the vast majority of Christianity has believed sight unseen. I don't understand how Habermas could even make that statement. It's like, come on, man. So, come on.
Peter was implausible, then a lot of stories in the book of Acts are just garbage.
And from there, all the guys start going, yeah. And they charge out in the world presenting the gospel.
Or just one of them does that.
And the 3 biggest named converters of the world, Paul, previous unbeliever, James, the brother of Jesus, previous unbeliever, and Peter, certainly a believer, but he denied his Lord 3 times. And these 3 guys are the guys who are the most sure that they've seen him, and they convinced the others. That's the way this particular theory works.
That's correct.
Yes, this is how this works. Once again, it doesn't require that all 11 believe. Okay, it doesn't. Paulogia points this out very, very well. You only need one of them, okay, to believe it and keep preaching it. And a bunch of other people continue to do that. So,
all we need is Peter and James to believe him, or at least come on board. Paul had his own conversion thing that had nothing at all to do with what Peter or the 12 were saying, as we've already covered extensively here. The origin of Peter's belief is completely unrelated to Paul's conversion by Paul's own words.
It's not an hallucination.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there because I'm running out of time, and I think that's about 2/3 of the way through. But yes, this is my problem here with Habermas at this point. It's like he can't possibly see how the vast majority of Christianity has been convinced sight unseen. And there's literally a blessing in the book of John for this that encourages it. Okay. And yet he's like, oh yeah, all these people are going to go out and start. But all it takes is Peter and Paul to be sincere in their belief that they saw the risen Jesus. Whether they actually saw the risen Jesus is irrelevant. But if they're sincere and they keep preaching in that sincerity, a lot of very gullible people are going to buy into it. And that is how you start a religion. Okay, if I started preaching fangs, with sincerity that I have actually seen fangs, you'd think that some people have just dismissed that as how would that ever work? There have literally been people who have posted in the chat, what if somebody finds your book 1,000 years from now and creates a cult from it? The problem is I have to actually take that seriously because people will believe in anything. This is why belief doesn't prove anything. Okay. And I try to get this across, so yeah, I do not understand how some people can't understand when you look at the anatomy of how religions start. Other religions have started without a resurrection Jesus and have been very successful. Why is it so hard to believe that maybe you don't need a resurrected Jesus to have the mythology about Jesus being resurrected being the basis for a faith that grows? Because people don't bother to question it. The problem with apologists is the criticism they would apply to other religions and how they grew and how they became popular, they don't apply to their own. And once you start doing that, like one of the most damaging things that was ever done to my faith was studying comparative religions. Like I picked up a book on comparative religions and I started going through it, reading what other people believed. And I'm like, that's kind of wacko, but I got some wacko stuff on my side too. And that's the problem. Like Habermas doesn't seem to realize that his faith is very capable of being just like all the rest, that there's a sincere small group of people that believe it. You don't even need the 11. You just need Peter and maybe John and Paul later with the Gentiles. And you just need a bunch of people to believe the message. And once the message is believed, and this is true for the vast majority of Christianity, why is it suddenly so incredible that the beginning of Christianity couldn't be like that? I do not understand. I do not understand. So, yeah. You got to have a couple of miracles, a little flesh eating, and lots of restrictions on food and sex. Yes. You spent the day with Fangs yesterday? There you go. See? You spent the whole day with Fangs yesterday, according to Earl. Very, very, I'm not going to go into the details of that. I'll let her reveal that as she wishes. She is the lap in which our Lord naps anyway, so she's fully capable of doing her own revelations about Fangs. But yes, that's my point. Like, I do not understand how Habermas can hand wave this criticism away, because it's probably one of the most legit criticisms of Christianity that I've seen. And the reason why Paulogia is kind of a bug up their butt is because they know that he makes a lot of sense. And a lot of critics of the resurrection that have this same argument make a lot of sense. When you study human nature, when you study how religions start, it is very applicable to Christianity. Like, it is not beyond the realm of possibility that's a perfectly complete naturalistic explanation for Christianity. It's perfectly reasonable. Okay. And that's the point. All right. I'm going to call it quits here. Let's see. Let me remind myself, 3731. Yeah, I think we can we'll zip. I don't know. There might be a fourth part. I don't know. I thought about 3, but a lot of what goes into in the rest of this video is some new stuff about the resurrection and the minimal witnesses and minimal fact stuff. So yes, I kind of want to talk about that. So we can do that next time. So yes, but I'm going to, let me remove Paul and company. All right. So I'm going to spend the rest of this stream until roughly 9 o'clock or so. We're going to talk artwork. So we're going to talk artwork. We're going to talk here. Before I get too far, I've got to save a couple images into a file. Oh, Earl just saw the latest one that you did. This is the Unholy Trinity Part 2. So there's that one. Oh my goodness. Yes. So I saw what you did there. All right. Oh, subdue artwork. It's arts and crafts time. Yes, Ron. Arts and crafts time. And a lot of this is based on the fact that Paulogia came and visited us a couple times. He'll probably, if he isn't here tonight, he'll probably watch later. So, because he's been kind of keeping tabs on me, because me and him and a few others are some of the people that are pushing against Habermas and his BS pretty hard, and I'm definitely doing that. So, so a lot of inspiration comes from this. So there's that. So, but Earl went to work. Earl's been like in her autistic brain mode, and I'm sure that her stylus has gotten duller, and a whole bunch of other things have happened Friday throughout the evening and today. So, so there's that. So it's show and tell time. So, so Earl began to do Star Wars related, and Paul from Paulogia asked for some artwork. Where was his artwork? And so Earl dove into this weekend. So we're going to do that, but we're going to start off with our Lord and Savior Fangs. I'm going to put him up here. Here, there we go. Fangs is taking the role of Chewbacca. He's a little short to be Chewbacca, but she added a simple belt, and so Chewbacca is still in this. So we found out that we can take Fangs and we can definitely put him in a Star Wars setting. So there we have it. We have, so there's that. Yeah, he's kind of like that. Yeah. So yes, the K-hole here. Yes, Earl has been in the K-hole for probably 24 hours now. Yes, it's Chewbacca. There we go. So Ewok Baka. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with short. I'm just saying that, we didn't have any, furry monsters standing around. And so there's that aspect of it. Yes, blessed shapes and styluses of all sizes. There we go. So this is the first one. So, 48, you've been in this 48 hours? I am so sorry. I'm going to make a suggestion, Earl. Why don't you turn to chapter 2 of the book, because it doesn't involve styluses and you can just edit, and it's a completely different thing. So we'll get you out of that K-hole there. So there you go. You like Chewbacca better? Okay, there we go. Chewbacca. So Fangs is taking the role of Chewbacca. So, and then Earl did her own. I'll do hers next. So we're going to add Earl to the stage. And Earl's problem, I think, is she had to fit several roles in the Star Wars saga. So, we definitely got the Princess Leia vibes, but we also got some C-3PO. Oh, okay. So yes, you've been at this for a couple of days. All right. So there you go. But Earl had to take several roles in the Star Wars saga. So C-3PO coloring, the outfit from Princess Leia, her classic buns. Yes, it's Princess Ikee. There you go. This one's got tattoos though, so there you go. C-3PO. There you go. Yes. And I love this one, Earl, actually. I think this one's hilarious. But I also, the facial expression, everything is just so you. It's so you. But yes, Princess Ikee. There we go. That might stay. So yes, we have Punch. I can see where you did that one too. I wanted to make mention. Yes, I can see that. So yes. But yeah. So there you go. And then, of course, not to be outdone, of course, the other member of the Unholy Trinity has to be involved, and that would be me. So I am taking my Dark Elf self and my Night Elf self from Warcraft and becoming Han Solo. So the version of Han Solo, which I absolutely smoking Bada Leah and myself. There you go. That's what it is. All right. Yeah, let's go back to that. All right. Yes, I can see this. Yes, there you go. But yes. But then she did this one and sent this one to me. The first copy didn't have the bunny on the belt buckle, and then she edited it, and I'm like, oh, much better. So it's Elf Solo, yes. You're a lot less annoying than and obviously last name. Ed Solo, yes, there we go. Yes, R.I.P. Carrie Fisher. She was, I ain't gonna lie, of all the women in sci-fi, she was definitely one of my crushes. I loved Carrie Fisher. So, but yes, but Ed Solo. I don't know if Earl's gotten any sleep. You'll have to ask her. But yes, so she did this one. I love the bunny art. And so I've got to, hold on, I've got to load up another image file here. And this is what happens when you put all three of us together. I am dubbing this the Unholy Trinity Star Wars edition. So there you go. In a holy book far, far away. So here we are again. But yes, the Unholy Trinity has made its stand on earth. Here we are. I absolutely love this. You got all characters drawn in 13 hours. I set a new record. I went to bed about 2:30 last night. Yes, yeah, she was very hilarious in that one. I remember that. I think I watched it once. I tend to watch comedies only once because they're never as funny the second time. So, but yes. But there you have it. That's the Unholy Trinity has now been completely Star Warified. And, you know, we got Ed Solo, Fangs, Chewbacca, a C-3PO, Princess Leia version. Go ahead. Go ahead. Repeat another fallacious argument. Go ahead. Do it. Oh, it's hilarious. Go ahead. But yes. So there's that. But yes. And so, of course, we wanted to give a nod to Paul and Paulogia. Yes, the Phantom Menace was influenced by the Virgin Birth. There was definitely that. But so we had to have our villain. We don't have a villain in the saga yet. So we have Habermass a Hut. So this is where the villain comes out. Gary the Hut on his evidences. So when I saw this, about fell out of my chair, Earl. I so appreciate it. I'm not trying to say anything about Habermas other than, you know, he's sitting on Jabba the Habermas. And when I saw this, I'm like, I try not to engage in personal attacks. I really do, but this is just too funny for me not to show. Yeah, but it was, and I just absolutely love this because it's got he's got a really, really big book. 4 really big books probably by the time he's done. Oh, I don't think we'll probably say I do have his email, so I will probably actually attach a couple of these things in a file. So we'll see what he does. I don't think he would post this either. I will, because I'm that kind of person. I'm not above lampooning every now and then. But yes, my problem with Habermas is, you know, he's sitting on his dioceses of evidences, and, you know, it's like, yeah. See you later, Evan. Appreciate you. And to do a tribute to Paul on his own, our hero, we had Earl do this one. Here, I'm gonna take myself out of this so it's a little bit bigger. But yes, I love what you did here, Earl. You took some of the stuff, you know, say my name, Gary, Paulogia. Evidences isn't a word. Evidence is plural. You know, 79 to 92% are Christians. 100% natural. Minimal witness hypothesis. Put all of the stuff. Or consider I thought he deserved a little rudeness from me. Yes. And, you know, maybe Paul from Paulogia wouldn't do that, Earl, but I will be rude for him. Like, I have no problem with calling Habermas a dishonest scholar. I have no idea. I have no problem doing that, because I think now that I know the nature of book 3 and some of the nature of the rest of the books that he's done, it's like, dude, you're just being dishonest. Oh, you changed it more after I sent you this? Oh, you did? Okay. Well, this is good, though. This is good because I think this is perfect because you're using Paul's own stuff. Paul as, Obi-Wan. I think I'm going to dub him the Obi-Wan Paul. It doesn't need a lightsaber. He's got his board with his stuff, and that's all it takes to beat Habermas. So, but yes. So say my name, Gary. Say my name. I think Paul would like this one. I really do. I think he would like it. Yeah, that's kind of on point. Yeah. So, but yes. Paul is too nice. It's definitely a little bit of rudeness, but I kind of like it. Now we take all that, we put all of that together, and Earl, I don't know. I think this might be a really good one from you. I think it might be. I think you may have nailed this one, but this is what it all looks like when you throw it all together. Turn a lot of you who are followers of this channel into droids. And here you go. And I'm gonna maximize this too. There's just so much into this later piece, and I am stunned. So, but yes, I really enjoyed this one. When I saw it, I once again almost fell out of my chair. You can see what changes that that Earl put into Paul's part. Yeah, this is definitely one. You got a lot of things in here, but it's very, very well done, Earl. I'm gonna give you like 1,000 head pats for this because it was, when I saw it, I'm like, okay, there's a lot of symbology in here, which is great. I love that kind of thing. But yes, putting me and Paul next to his board and, say evidences one more time, or, it's good stuff. I mean, I appreciate it. It was like, I love this piece. I don't know. We're gonna have to find a way to incorporate it in some of the other stuff that we do. Yeah, it's definitely, she's way ahead of me, to Elizabeth. I'm going to give Earl props for this one, but yes. But yeah, this is one of, well, we do very gentle haps, and she's going to squee about it, but yeah, we'll give her gentle head pats. But it's, when Earl does work, okay, you have to look at the details. Like, you can't just look at the big picture. There's just so much stuff that she puts into it, and she thinks in very symbolic forms. And so she communicates so much, like, with what she does. Okay. Like taking a lot of this stuff and turning it into something that communicates in very symbolic forms is very difficult. I'm sorry, it is very, very difficult. I have never seen an artist like Earl do this, but she's been doing, and her work has gotten better and better, and I've just enjoyed it. Happy to have her as the artist of the channel for the most part. I've gotten a couple of things from other people. Mighty Philbert, of course, has contributed musically, but this is just, Earl, this is one of your best things. Okay. It's like, it really is one of your best things. But yeah, yes, the drones and the bots. Yes, they're everywhere. You don't think Jesus would have committed genocide against the Sand People for killing his mother the way Anakin? Probably not. Yes. Ian McGregor version. Yes. Is Obi-Wan here. So, I actually, one of the most, I know this sounds weird, but because everybody focuses on the Skywalker character throughout the saga, but I think the Obi-Wan Kenobi character throughout the entire saga is one of the most influential, holds the story together characters there is. Like, there's just so much that goes on. all the way from episode 1 to, even into episode 6. Like, it's like one of the best ones. I've always loved the character of Obi-Wan. He reminds me so much of Odin at times, like, the figure, the wandering figure that kind of just protects things. So I just have loved that. But yes, but this, Earl, I'm going to give you 1,000 head pats, gently given, hopefully gently received. I can't see details. Yeah. You got to get to a computer on this one, Ron. I'm going to leave this up for a while at the end of the video. You can go to it and pause it and freeze it. It might end up, it might also end up on the Facebook page at some point. I'm sure it will. I tend to do older artwork on the Facebook page so it gets some more life. But yes, I absolutely appreciated this one. This also is very symbolic of the argument that me and Paul and many others are having with Habermas. Like, I hate to say it. It's like, would you please get a better argument? Would you please stop? Habermas just does two things that drive me nuts. One, he doesn't bother to fact check himself. And when somebody else does it, he gets angry about it and instead of saying, hey, you know what, they're right, I need to backlog on that and say that they were right and fix it. So, but yes. And then he also needs to stop, like gatekeeping because I don't have a terminal degree. So he would not take my criticism seriously either, even though I have a master's degree in theology and I've got a bachelor's degree in biblical studies and ministry. I have a PhD prep degree, research level degree, but he would not accept that. You got to have a terminal degree in a proper field to be a true scholar, according to him. And it's like, that's not the way scholarship works. So, and this so symbolizes that struggle, like being just the captain of we'll have to come up with a ship too, Earl, because we got to have the Millennium Falcon in here somewhere at some point, but it ain't going to be the Millennium Falcon. It's going to be something else. And you can take your time on that one. Don't think you got to dive right back into that. But yes, but there you have it, folks. And I know this is on a personal level. I like this one. When I saw this the first time, I'm like, yeah, good scholarship doesn't ring. It just requires recognition. Yes. But yes, when I saw this one made my heart go, yes, yes. Now the Holy Trinity is in a completely different phase. So there's that. Hey, Dave, saw you on your show. I am so glad you're doing better, but I know there's lots of struggles ahead, and we're having fun over here at the Rabyd Atheist. I spent a lot of time reviewing Paul's video about Habermas. And now we're at the end of the stream, and I'm just kind of like, so there's that. Yeah, I agree with your choice there. He won't acknowledge, Luke Paul's greatness. He's overconfident, and he expects them. Jabba the Hutt what killed him was his overconfidence. And so there's that. Talks too damning currently. Moves at a glacial pace and views remain unmoving on his throne. His scholastic avatar has a double chin. Yes. And so when you see this picture, this is what's going on in all that. Or when you see this one, you can see that's the symbology. That's, notice what Earl did there. She had to do two things to explain that one thing. Okay. This is why I love Earl as an artist. She packs a lot of stuff into her symbols. And I just love that about her art. So you can see that. Elizabeth says he kind of sounds like her, but yes, I can see that. But yes, that's why he ended up as Jabba the Hutt. Like, he's unmovable, regardless of what comes against him, and overconfident. So I would say those two things are true about Habermas. But yes, it's like, yes, there's that. But yeah, Dave, I was so glad to see you back up and around, though. Appreciate all that you do. I don't know how you do it, finding the worst videos on YouTube and trying to make something out of it. I can't do that. There you go. Oh, the book come hold it. Oh, which one is it? See, my contact lenses, I've changed them. I now have bifocals, and it takes me forever to focus on shit. Oh, I know that book. Do I have that book in there? Oh, it cracked you up. Oh, I know it. I can't read the here. Let me do. Can I make this bigger so I can see? Because I am blind. Oh my goodness. Oh, smart guy's facts. Now with a master's degree. Okay, there you go. Okay. I know I've seen though a cover like that in one of the books. So there. Yes, but yes. Hey, no problem, man. You rock too, man. Keep hanging in there. But yeah. Oh my gosh, Earl. Oh my goodness. But yes. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I find this whole, I think Earl has encapsulated the debate right now that's going on between Habermas and a lot of his critics. It's just, it's good stuff. But I'm glad that, Paul makes an appearance here as Obi-Wan, and I can make an appearance as Han Solo, and Fangs Baka and C3 Leia are here, and it's kind of hard out there. It's a teeny tiny text. I bet you if you have it on a full screen, like a big screen, you could probably see it. But yeah, it's there's just so much here, Earl, and it's so good. And I like how you turned a lot of the folks that come here on the reg into bots. So there's a lot of bots. So I like the droids everywhere. That's great, delivery droids. So yeah. But yes, smart guy facts with a master's degree. There you go. Yeah. But great stuff. And I don't know. That's a lot of the Earl artwork. She has been in that K-hole for 48 hours, and just a bunch of stuff has come out of that. And I love it. I love it. So there you go. Oh man. All right. But yes, I'm gonna go though to my personal favorite, because I love this one. The Unholy Trinity Part 2, Star Wars version. So there you go. We have our own Trinity here in Fangsology. So there you go. There are many prophets too, like Azho's a prophet, and the Hellhound. So, and many, many others. And the way the book is coming out, guys, we're going to have a ton of people that are prophets. So there you go. All right. Well, I'm going to call it a good one. It's been absolutely. So there you go. I'm back in. Here, let me get myself just a little bit bigger. There we go. But I want to thank everybody for stopping by. It's been a great stream. I know that sometimes it's problematic to watch a stream this long. I had several comments on the last one. So I am thinking about, like cutting out parts of it that are the more academic parts and putting that in a video of its own. So you can just deal with that. Because I really like our streams because it's very interactive, and I like hanging out with the community and all of you. So thank you very much for stopping by. It always does my heart good. I appreciate it. You guys are awesome as always. So thank you. Repeating delivery, cancel shame and humility, limit time only, logic and reason, delivery life. Okay, so we got all the delivery ones in there too. Yeah, okay, I like all the ones on the delivery. There you go. But yes, so there's a lot of stuff in that artwork. I will, as with all of Earl's artwork, it eventually gets posted on my Facebook page again. at some point in different forms. So I'm going to start posting some of that probably more regularly too, because it's like, if you're interested in the artwork and looking at it, it's great. So yes, but here we are once again, the unholy trinity battling the dark forces of the galaxy, Habermass included. So thank you very much. And may our Lord Fangs bless all of you. May he nibble on your hearts. Make sure you offer up carrots as an offering to him. He will come and nibble on them. Make sure they're circumcised ahead of time so they're even more holy than they normally. And you can be whatever robot you want in this picture. You can absolutely be whatever one. We're not going to diss Elizabeth. You can do whatever you want. But thanks everybody for stopping by. Appreciate it all. Nom nom and all that stuff. The misadventures of Fangs, me and Earl are continuing to pound at that. So, and it's coming along. I'm working on chapter 3. So we've set a deadline of next year, July, to get that done. And I think we're going okay. We're going okay. Chapter 3 is a little bit difficult because I'm trying to keep it funny. And there's a lot of serious shit I want to say about Yahweh in it. But like, so there's a, all right. Yeah. Go ahead and do that. I can email all this stuff to him. I'm going to probably email most of it to him and say, this is Earl's artwork, and she wanted to make sure you got it. and he may watch this later and see it too. So Paul's been very interested in what I'm doing with him and Habermas. So we'll see. Maybe not. I know that he listens to stuff at like triple speed or something, so he can hear all of this in less than 40 minutes. So there you go. But thanks everybody for stopping by. And as always, folks, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. So make sure you're taking all your time, your money, your opportunities, the things that you do well, and spend them on yourself, the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. And don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith, because that's a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, folks, thanks for stopping by. And I Killed Earl and myself, thank you for enjoying what we do. I appreciate all of you. You guys keep us going, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much. And as always, folks, thanks for stopping by, and we'll catch you all next time.
It's time to take a stand, bringing the truth to a fucked up land. We've had enough of the lies and deceit. We're done for good with the toxicity. Oh, hail, thanks, we are the Rabyd Nation. Oh, hail, thanks, we are the Rabyd Nation. Oh, hail, thanks, we are the Rabyd Nation.